Hook, cold open. Why is my name on a gravestone? Instant mystery. Girl sees her own name and birth date on a grave plus the date of death. It was supposed to be a peaceful trip. Emma Lark had been feeling overwhelmed in the city, her job, her friends. Even her own apartment felt like too much. So when she saw an ad for a cozy bed and breakfast in the quiet countryside town of Elmridge, she booked it without a second thought. No Wi-Fi, no noise, just nature and peace. It sounded like the reset she needed. She arrived just before sunset. The town was quaint and lovely in a way that felt like a memory. Cobblestone streets, fading Victorian houses, and a thick line of pine trees enclosing it like a forgotten secret. The air smelled of earth and rain. After checking in, Emma went for a walk through the woods behind the inn. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the trees cast long, spindly shadows across the mossy ground. She should have turned back, but something drew her further in. She saw it after 10 minutes of walking. A small, crumbling cemetery stood in a clearing. The gate was rusted open. The stones leaned in crooked silence, their inscriptions almost faded with time. Curiosity tugged at her feet. She wandered among the graves, reading the names. Most were from the 1800s, until she saw one that made her freeze. Her hand shot up to cover her mouth. There it was, Emma Grace Lark. Born March 12, 1996. Died August 17, 2025. Her birthday, her full name, even the middle name only her parents used. The death date just 1 week from today. Emma backed away slowly, her heart pounding in her ears. She looked around as if someone would jump out, laughing, saying it was a joke. But no one came. The forest around her had fallen deathly silent, setting the scene. A quiet, forgotten town. She's on a solo trip, a countryside getaway to escape the city and clear her mind. The night wind whispered through the trees, sending a chill through Emma's spine. She backed away from the gravestone slowly, careful not to trip on the gnarled roots beneath her feet. The stone felt like it was still staring at her. She tried to rationalize. It had to be a coincidence, a sick prank. Maybe someone had carved her name into an old stone. Maybe the town played weird jokes on tourists. She had to believe that. Still, as she stumbled out of the cemetery, breath shallow and legs shaky, the atmosphere around her seemed heavier. The night felt too quiet, the shadows deeper. Even the trees looked different, twisted, looming. By the time she got back to the inn, her shoes were caked in dirt and leaves. She didn't remember how long she had walked. Maybe an hour. Maybe more. She wasn't thinking clearly. The Elmridge Pines Inn was a small, 2-story building made of aged wood and faded red brick. There were flower boxes under the windows, though the flowers inside them had long wilted. A crooked welcome sign hung by the front door, swinging gently in the wind. The innkeeper, a woman in her 60s named Maureen, was seated behind the front desk. Her white hair was tied back neatly, and she wore a wear-upon shawl over her shoulders. She looked up from her book as Emma entered. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Maureen said with a crooked smile. Emma tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "Just went for a walk. Got lost. Forest'll do that. Has a way of twisting back on itself. You'll get used to it." Emma nodded weakly and made her way up the creaky wooden stairs to her room. Room 3A. Small, simple. A bed with thick quilts, a dusty armchair, a desk by the window overlooking the trees. She locked the door behind her, pulled the curtains shut, and collapsed onto the bed. Her phone had no signal. Of course, that was part of the appeal when she booked the place. Digital detox, the ad said. Now it felt more like being stranded. She tossed and turned for hours, unable to shake the image of the grave, the stone, her name, that date, her date. Eventually, she fell into a restless sleep. Emma woke late the next morning. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, and birds chirped beyond the window. For a moment, it felt like a dream. She let herself believe that. She went downstairs and found a small dining room where Maureen had set out breakfast. There were 3 other guests, an older couple and a woman in her 30s, all chatting quietly over coffee. Emma filled her plate with toast and fruit, poured herself some tea, and sat at a small corner table. She opened her notebook. She hadn't written in weeks, not since her job burnout pushed her into this retreat. But now she wanted to jot things down to make sense of last night. She wrote, "Grave, my name, my birthday. Same middle name, same date. August 17th. That's in 6 days. No one would know that unless they knew me. But I've never been here before, have I?" She underlined that last line, have I? Something about this town felt off, like she'd been here in another life, or in a dream. After breakfast, Emma wandered into the town center. There wasn't much to see. A narrow main street with a grocery store, a post office, a small church with a cracked bell tower. Most of the shops looked closed or long abandoned. The windows were dusty, and the air smelled like old wood and forgotten stories. A hand-painted sign read, Elmridge Estate, 1867. Beneath it, someone had scrawled in red marker, the town time forgot. Emma snapped a photo out of habit and remembered her phone had no service. The photo app still worked, though. She checked the gallery and paused. There was a picture she didn't remember taking. It was blurry. Trees, a shadow in the foreground. She squinted. It looked like a figure, standing at the edge of the cemetery. She swiped left. Another photo. Closer now. The same shape, vague, but upright. Watching. She hadn't taken these, she was sure. Her stomach twisted. She walked faster, hoping to find someone who could explain things, or at least confirm she wasn't losing her mind. A general store sat at the end of the street. She entered. A small bell above the door jingled. Inside, it smelled of pine and old paper, shelves lined with canned goods, postcards, and handmade trinkets. Behind the counter stood an older man in suspenders, reading a newspaper. He looked up and nodded. "Morning," he said. "Morning," Emma replied. "Can I ask you something kind of weird?" He raised an eyebrow. "Sure. Is there an old cemetery in the woods, about 10 minutes west of the inn?" His eyes flickered, just for a second, but she saw it. "There's a few old graves scattered around," he said casually. "This town's been here a while." "I saw one with my name on it," she said, watching his face. "Emma Lark, my birthday. Even the date of my death, next week." He went still. The newspaper slipped from his hand. "Could be a prank," he said, but his voice was flat. "You've heard of this before, haven't you?" He didn't answer. Emma leaned in. "Has it happened to someone else?" He met her eyes, then slowly walked over to the front door, locked it, and turned the open sign to closed. "Not here," he said. "Not where others can hear." He motioned for her to follow him to the back of the store. The back room smelled of tobacco and cedar. A small desk, old filing cabinets, and photos on the wall. Black and white portraits of families long gone. The man sat down and motioned to a second chair. "You're not the first," he said. Emma's heart sank. "I've lived here 50 years. Seen 3 others just like you. Tourists. Wander into the woods. Find their own grave. Always the same story. Same name. Same birthday. But the death date is always within a week. What happened to them? They left town, or tried to. One vanished at the train station. Another checked out of the inn and never made it home. Third one, he dug up his own grave. No one ever saw him again." Emma felt the air leave her lungs. "Why? What is it?" The man looked away. "Some folks say Elmridge is cursed. Others say time folds here. Like the past and future brush against each other. The grave shows your end because it already happened. Just not yet, not in your timeline. That's impossible. So is seeing your own death, yet here you are." Emma shook her head. "What if I destroy the stone?" "They tried that," he said. Next day, it was back. Same name, same date. She stood up, suddenly needing air. "Wait," the man said, reaching into a drawer. He pulled out a small wooden box and handed it to her. "What is this?" "Photos, taken by the others, just in case." She opened the box. Inside were faded Polaroids, images of gravestones, each with a different name. But one thing in common: death date circled in red. And a shadow, in every picture. A faint shape behind the graves, watching. "I didn't believe it at first," the man said quietly. "But after the last one vanished, I stopped doubting. If I were you, I'd leave town tonight." Emma clutched the box. "I tried last night. The road turned me back." He looked down. "Then it may already be too late." Back at the inn, Emma sat on her bed, the box of photos in her lap. She stared at her own photo again. The grave, the date, the figure. She zoomed in on the shadow. It was clearer now, like a silhouette. It looked like her, standing at the grave, watching herself. She slammed the phone down. The room suddenly felt colder. She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Her breath misted. Then came a whisper, not from outside, from inside her room. A voice just above a whisper, so quiet she could barely make it out. 6 days left. Emma turned slowly. The mirror across the room was fogging up, and on the glass, in backward letters, were 2 words. Dig it. First strange feeling. Something feels wrong. Local stare. Her hotel room mirror fogs up with the word, leave. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat up in bed, the covers pulled around her like a shield, staring at the mirror across the room. The word had vanished, gone, as if it had never been there. The fog had cleared, but her mind hadn't. Her phone still had no service. No Wi-Fi, no bars, no signal at all. She tried calling the front desk, but the line was dead. And when she opened the door to check the hallway, it was quiet. Too quiet. The inn seemed deserted. She waited for sunrise. When the first light filtered through the curtains, Emma changed clothes and went downstairs. Maureen was back at her desk, looking as if she hadn't moved all night. Her eyes were sharp, and her knitting needles clicked in rhythm. Emma hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask you something?" Maureen didn't look up. "Go ahead. Have you ever seen something in the mirrors here, writing?" Click, click, click. Maureen paused, mid-stitch. Then she finally looked up. "Mirrors hold things," she said softly. "They reflect more than just us, if you know what I mean." Emma swallowed. "So it's not just me?" "You're not the first guest to ask that question," Maureen said, voice even. "Some people say mirrors in old places remember things. Others say they show you what's coming." Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. "What did it say?" Maureen asked. Emma hesitated. "It said dig it. Last night. Then this morning something else." Maureen raised an eyebrow. Emma took a deep breath. "This morning, after the fog returned, it said, leave. Just that. In capital letters." The older woman didn't look surprised. Instead, she nodded slowly, like she had heard it before. "I'd listen, if I were you. But why? What am I supposed to leave behind? The inn? The town?" Maureen didn't answer. Just then, the door opened behind Emma. A sharp jingle from the bell. Two men stepped in. Locals, by the look of them. One was tall, gray-bearded, with a worn flannel coat and dirt-stained boots. The other was thinner, with deep-set eyes and a limp. They stopped when they saw Emma and gave her the same expression the others in town had the day before. A subtle pause, a flicker of recognition, followed by suspicion, and then something colder, fear. "Morning, Henry." "Bill," Maureen greeted them, not missing a beat. The tall one intoned slowly, "Maureen." The other one, Bill, narrowed his eyes at Emma. "You the girl from the city?" Emma said nothing. Her heart started to beat faster. "She is," Maureen said calmly, knitting resuming. "And she's having a rough morning. Be nice." Henry cleared his throat. "Just came to leave some flyers about the flood watch by the lower ridge. Heard the creeks rising again." Maureen waved them toward the bulletin board. The two men pinned their paper, nodded once more, and left without saying another word to Emma. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Emma walked over to the window and peeked through the sheer curtains. Outside, the two men stood in the middle of the street, watching her window, not speaking, not moving, just staring. Emma left the inn an hour later, unable to sit still. She needed air, answers, something. She walked through the town again. The morning sun was up now, casting light through the thinning mist. But even with the daylight, Elmridge felt off, hollow, as if someone had stripped the soul out of the place and painted over it. People moved slowly. Doors creaked open just wide enough for eyes to peer through. A child riding a tricycle stopped when she passed, turned, and pedaled the other way without a word. The few people on the street all glanced at her, then quickly away. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the grave now. It was everything. She passed by the church. The door was ajar. A sign in front read, "Service canceled until further notice." Weeds had grown up through the steps. The stained glass windows were cracked, like eyes that had been shattered. Across the street, she spotted a bookshop. "Whitaker's Used and Rare," the sign read. She pushed the door open. A small bell rang, and the scent of dust and old pages greeted her like an old friend. "Hello," she called out. No answer. Shelves leaned with age, filled with worn leather-bound volumes, some with strange titles through beneath time. Names left behind, reflections, and their echoes. Emma moved further in. A thump came from upstairs. She froze. Then, cautiously, she ascended the staircase that creaked beneath her weight. On the second floor, a row of tall, narrow windows let in just enough light to illuminate the dust in the air. Rows of shelves stood like silent sentinels. In the far corner, she found an old man sitting at a table, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, as if sleeping or listening. He opened one eye. "You saw it, didn't you?" he rasped. Emma's breath caught. "Saw what?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he pushed an open book across the table toward her. It was filled with illustrations, old gravestones, sketches, maps. Then she saw her own name, scribbled in the margins. Emma Grace Lark return. "I don't understand." "The ground remembers," the man said. "Sometimes too well, and sometimes it calls back." "Why me?" she whispered. He looked up slowly. "You must have heard it." "Heard what?" "The echo of your last breath." Emma took a step back, her heart pounding. This town, the man said, is a seam in the cloth, between the world we know and something older. It doesn't let go of the dead, not really. If you hear the ground speak, you're already halfway gone. I don't believe in that, she said shakily. I don't believe in curses, or time loops, or echoes. He smiled. Then why are you here? Emma had no answer. That night, back in her room, the mirror fogged again. She had left the window closed, the heater off. But there it was, unmistakable, the clouded white haze spreading across the surface, and slowly painfully appearing through the mist. Run. She stared at it, paralyzed. And then she noticed something new. Her reflection was still, but she was breathing, chest rising and falling. Her mirrored self was not. It just stood there, unmoving, eyes locked with hers. Then it smiled. Emma screamed and threw the lamp at the mirror. The glass shattered, fragments scattering across the floor like sharp whispers. The door burst open. Maureen stood there, holding a flashlight. What happened? The mirror-me reflection at it moved. Maureen looked at the broken glass. It's starting, she muttered under her breath. Emma stepped back, trembling. What's happening to me? Maureen met her eyes, and this time, she looked genuinely afraid. You've crossed into the place between. You shouldn't have gone to that grave. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter. Now that it's seen you, it won't let go. What is it? Maureen hesitated. Then she whispered, it's you. But not just you. It's the version of you that's already died, and it wants to trade places. Emma stared at her in horror. That's why you keep seeing it. In the mirror, in the photos, round the grave. But why me? Maureen looked away. Sometimes the veil thins. Some souls are vulnerable, especially the ones who don't know who they are, or who they've been. Emma's mind spun. You said others have seen it. They all vanish, the moment their reflection moves on its own. Emma looked down at the broken glass. One shard showed her face, still smiling. Discovery. The grave is real. While exploring an old cemetery for fun, she stumbles upon a gravestone with her full name, birth date, and a death date next week. The next morning, Emma woke feeling both restless and determined. The eerie events of the previous night's mirrors fogging, whispers, the shattered glass had unsettled her deeply. But the truth was gnawing at her. The grave, the photo, the shadows. She needed to understand what she was dealing with. After a sparse breakfast at the inn, she decided to return to the cemetery. Not just the small clearing she had stumbled upon before, but the larger, older graveyard she had heard locals mention in hushed tones, one rumored to be centuries old. Tucked further into the woods, where the earliest settlers of Elmridge had been buried. Emma grabbed a worn map Maureen had left on her desk, a roughly sketched map showing paths through the forest and the location of several cemeteries, marked with faded X's. The map was yellowed with age, creased along the folds, and looked like it hadn't been updated for decades. The sun was still low in the sky as Emma set out, the air crisp and smelling faintly of damp earth and pine needles. The path was narrow, winding beneath towering trees that filtered the sunlight into fractured beams. Every step deeper into the woods felt like crossing into another world where time slowed, and the air held a weight that pressed against her lungs. After about 20 minutes of walking, the trees began to thin, and a worn iron gate appeared, half sunken into the moss-covered ground. The gate squeaked open as she pushed it gently, revealing a vast graveyard stretching out before her. It was larger and older than the clearing she had visited the night before. Moss-covered stones leaned at odd angles, some broken, others standing tall and proud despite centuries of neglect. The names on many were nearly impossible to read. Emma moved slowly between the rows, her fingers trailing over cool stone surfaces, her heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She stopped at one gravestone and read the faded inscription aloud. Jonathan Whitaker, 18,000,000 to 101,884, founder of Elmridge. Nearby, a weathered wooden cross leaned against an ancient oak tree, wrapped in thick ivy. Emma's breath caught as she turned a corner. There, near the far end of the graveyard, was a gravestone unlike the others. It was polished granite, dark, cold, and freshly carved. Her name was etched deeply into the stone, as if it had been chiseled yesterday. Emma Grace Lark, born March 12, 1996, died August 17, 2025. Emma staggered back. The air seemed to thicken around her. She touched the stone with trembling fingers. It was real, solid, cold. She looked around frantically. No one else was in sight. How could this be? She hadn't seen this grave the day before. She knelt to examine the stone more closely. Beneath her name, a small engraving read, "Here lies the end of what was, and the beginning of what will be. The date was exactly 1 week from today. Emma's mind reeled. Her heart thumped loud enough to echo in her ears. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't coincidence. This was something else. Something sinister. She pulled her phone from her pocket, hoping to take a picture. The camera app opened, and the image appeared clear on the screen. She snapped several photos, zooming in on the name and date. Then, she heard it. A soft, almost imperceptible sound like footsteps on dry leaves. Emma spun around. Nothing. She stepped back toward the path but froze as a shadow passed between the trees. She squinted, trying to see what it was. No one. Only the ghostly rustle of leaves. Emma swallowed hard. Her instinct screamed at her to leave, but something, fear or fascination, kept her rooted. She pulled the box of old photos from her bag. Among them was a picture she had never seen before. A photograph of the very gravestone she now stood before, taken from a distance. She flipped the photo over and saw a note scribbled in shaky handwriting. Found by those who should not have come. Beware the watcher. Emma looked back up at the grave. There was no watcher in sight, just the empty clearing and the slow sway of tree branches. She explored the cemetery further, searching for answers among the graves. Some had dates that made her pause, some from years she hadn't expected, some with symbols she didn't understand. One tombstone bore an unfamiliar name, but was surrounded by withered flowers, and dozens of small stones placed carefully at its base, a sign of respect or mourning. Emma bent closer to the inscription. Elise Marlowe, 19,021,920. Next to it was another. Samuel Carter, 18,971,920. Both have the same death year. Emma wondered if a tragedy had struck the town. Her fingers brushed a brittle piece of paper lodged in the crevice of a nearby stone. She pulled it out carefully. It was a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Mysterious Disappearances in Elmridge. Young travelers vanish without a trace." The article described how several visitors had come to the town over the past decades, and had vanished shortly after arriving. Some had been rumored to have been last seen near the old cemetery. Emma's heart sank deeper. Her own name on a gravestone, a date marking her death in just days, and now a history of disappearances tied to this place. She felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her. Suddenly, a cold gust swept through the graveyard. The trees seemed to shudder. Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. As she turned to leave, something caught her eye. Near the edge of the cemetery, partially buried under fallen leaves and dirt, was a small wooden box. Curiosity overwhelmed her fear. She knelt and carefully unearthed it. The box was old but sturdy, covered in strange symbols carved deep into the wood. She opened it slowly. Inside was a folded letter, brittle with age, and a small, tarnished locket. Emma unfolded the letter. The ink was faded but legible. "To whoever finds this, beware the shadow that walks beside you. It is not your friend. It waits for you to falter, to claim what it lost. The grave is not an end, but a doorway. If you choose to cross, there is no return." Emma's fingers trembled as she held the letter. Her eyes flicked to the locket, which she opened carefully. Inside was a faded photo, a portrait of a young woman with eyes full of sorrow. A name was etched inside the locket's cover, Elise. Emma's mind raced. Could this Elise be connected to the disappearances, to the shadow mentioned in the letter? She snapped photos of the letter and locket with her phone. Suddenly, the sun dipped behind a cloud, and shadows crept quickly across the graveyard. Emma felt a presence behind her. She spun around but saw only the empty woods. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She didn't want to believe in ghosts or curses, but here she was, standing in a cemetery that held her own name, her own fate, and warnings she couldn't ignore. She took a deep breath and made her way back toward the gate. As she walked, she noticed something peculiar. Footprints in the soft dirt barefoot, small, leading away from the cemetery path into the woods. Emma hesitated. The footprints were fresh. She looked down at her own shoe boots, made for hiking, thick soles. The footprints were not hers. She followed the trail cautiously. It led her deeper into the forest until she reached a small clearing. In the center was a large, flat stone, half buried in moss and vines. Emma brushed the moss away and gasped. Carved into the stone were words she had seen before. "Here lies the end of what was, and the beginning of what will be." Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet trembled slightly. A low hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to come from beneath the earth. Emma stepped back, her heart hammering. From the shadows, a figure emerged, tall and pale, draped in tattered clothes that seemed to ripple in a breeze she could not feel. The figure's eyes glowed faintly, Emma wanted to scream, but no sound came. The figure stepped closer. In a voice like the rustling of dead leaves, it whispered, "You belong here. Your time is near." Emma's legs gave out. She collapsed backward, scrambling away. The figure did not move after her retreat. Emma scrambled through the trees, heart pounding, breath ragged. She didn't stop running until she was back at the inn, safe behind the locked door of her room. That night, Emma lay awake, the images of the grave and the shadowy figure haunting her thoughts. She knew the date on the gravestone wasn't just a warning, it was a deadline. And the grave wasn't just a place to rest, it was a trap. The question burned inside her. Was this her fate, or was there a way to escape what was already written? Shock and denial. This has to be a prank. She investigates. Same middle name, same birth hospital, even same blood type on a funeral record. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, gripping the edges of the thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her thoughts churned like a storm. The grave, the inscription, the whisper in the woods, the shadow with glowing eyes. And now there's a locket from someone named Elise and a handwritten warning about a shadow that waits to claim what it lost. She pulled the photo of her gravestone back up on her phone and stared at it. Emma Grace Lark, born March 12, 1996, died August 17, 2025. 6 days. It had to be a joke, an elaborate one, a cruel one, but explainable somehow. She was a rational person. She didn't believe in fate or ghosts or cursed towns. Someone must have looked her up online, used public records. Maybe it was part of a viral prank, maybe even a hidden camera show. But that didn't explain the voice in the mirror, or the reflection that didn't breathe, or the figure in the woods. Still, she clung to the only lifeline she had left, denial. This has to be a prank, she whispered to herself. A prank or a mistake. She needed evidence. Emma hurried downstairs to the front desk. Maureen was nowhere to be seen. A note sat on the counter. "Back by lunch, don't go in the basement." Emma blinked at the note. The basement? She ignored it. Instead, she went to the hallway, past the kitchen, and found a door marked "Office Employees Only." She glanced behind her. No one. The doorknob turned easily. Inside, the office was dusty, dimly lit by a small window. Filing cabinets lined the walls, and an old desktop computer sat on the desk, humming faintly. Emma sat and wiggled the mouse. No password, just a cluttered desktop filled with old files. She searched the folders: invoices, reservations, maintenance, and finally found one labeled Guests Archive. Her fingers trembled as she typed her name into the search bar. Emma Lark. A document opened. Her reservation was there. Check-in date, room 3A. 1 week stay, paid in advance. But what caught her eye was a strange file next to it. Emma_G_Lark_funeral_prep.pdf. Her heart froze. She clicked it. A scanned document appeared. It was a funeral director's form. Name, Emma Grace Lark. Dob, March 12, 1996. Blood type O. Place of birth, St. Mary's Hospital, Baltimore. Next of kin, unlisted. Cause of death, TBA. Date of burial, August 17, 2025. Emma's hands shook. She stepped back from the desk, suddenly dizzy. This was impossible. It wasn't just her name. The middle name, the birthday, the blood type. Even the Hospital St. Mary's in Baltimore was accurate. That wasn't public information. Not even on her social media. She backed into the wall, hyperventilating. No, 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 no. This wasn't a joke. Someone had details about her no stranger could possibly know. She slammed the file closed and yanked the USB drive from the computer. She needed help, real help. Emma left the inn and walked into town, the morning sun offering no warmth. She passed the old post office and stepped into the sheriff's station, a squat brick building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s. Inside, a fan spun lazily overhead. A lone man sat at the front desk, sipping coffee and reading a yellowed newspaper. "Hi," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to report something. It's urgent." The man looked up. He was in his 50s, gray at the temples, badge pinned to a faded uniform. "You're the one staying up at Maureen's place, right?" Emma nodded, cautiously. He motioned to a chair. "Have a seat, Sheriff Lane." She sat, clutching the USB drive in her pocket like it was the last thing anchoring her to reality. "There's a grave," she said, "in the old cemetery. It has my name on it. My exact name. And my birthday. It even has a date of death 6 days from now." Sheriff Lane didn't react. She continued. "I found a funeral record in the inn's computer system. It had my birth hospital, blood type, information no one else could know. Still, he didn't flinch, just looked at her with a slow, calculating gaze. Emma pulled the USB from her pocket and placed it on the desk. It's all on here. I don't know what kind of sick joke this is, but someone's threatening me. He didn't take the drive. Miss Lark, he said slowly, did anyone ever tell you about your mother? Emma blinked. What? Your mother, Margaret Lark, came through Elmridge once, back in '95. Before you were born. Emma shook her head. That's impossible. She's never been here. She stayed at the same room. Emma's blood ran cold. She saw things, Lane continued. Said a shadow followed her. We thought she was unstable. She left after 3 nights and swore she'd never come back. That can't be true, Emma whispered. She never mentioned. Because she didn't want it to find you, Lane said. Emma stood. You're lying. I'm telling you what I know, he replied, calm as ever. What I remember. I want to leave town, she said, right now. He shrugged, then leave. She stormed out of the station, but his words followed her into the sunlight. Your mother was here, same room, same story. Emma returned to the inn, grabbed her things, and tossed them into her bag. She didn't care about the clothes. She only took the essentials: phone, wallet, charger, notebook, and the box of old photographs. She left a note for Maureen. I'm leaving. I don't care what this is. I'm not staying here to die. Outside, the sky had darkened. Clouds loomed low and heavy. Emma drove her rental car out of town, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The road curved through the forest, winding like a snake, but she kept her eyes forward. As she passed a weathered sign reading "Leaving Elmridge, come again soon," she allowed herself a shaky breath of relief. But the road didn't end. It curved again, and then she passed the same sign, "Leaving Elmridge, come again soon." Her heart stopped. She was going in circles. She drove faster. The same trees passed by, the same bend in the road, the same moss-covered rock. She passed the sign again, and again. An hour later, she returned to the inn. Maureen stood at the front desk, as if she had never left. Emma didn't speak. Neither did Maureen. The two women locked eyes, and something passed between them, an unspoken understanding. You tried, didn't you? Maureen said softly. Emma just nodded. Maureen looked down at her hands. They always try. Emma walked past her, numb, and climbed the stairs to her room. Everything was just as she left it. She sat down on the bed, pulled out the funeral file from her bag, and stared at it again. There was a line she hadn't noticed before. Body identified via DNA. Confirmed match. She flipped the page. There was a photo of a corpse. It had been cleaned and prepared for burial, eyes closed, mouth shut, pale, cold, but unmistakable. It was her. Local legend. You saw the grave too. A local teen shares that a few travelers before her found their own graves and then disappeared. Emma sat in her room with the photo of the corpse spread across her lap. Her face, her features, her death. She stared at it until her eyes went dry. Logic had long since abandoned her. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't a prank. The photo was real, just like the gravestone was real. Just like the fact that she couldn't escape Elmridge was real. She closed the file and tucked it back into her bag, feeling the locket press against her hip. The one from Elise. The one warning her to beware the shadow that walks beside you. She needed to speak to someone who wasn't lying to her. Not Maureen. Not the sheriff. Not whoever wrote the funeral records and forged her death. Someone who wasn't part of this place. Someone who hadn't already accepted the curse. She grabbed her coat and headed for the town square. It was quiet, as always, shops barely open, people watching from behind windows. Even the air seemed to resist her. Then she saw him, a teenage boy leaning against the old gas station wall, kicking a crushed soda can back and forth. Hoodie up, eyes half-lidded, the kind of bored energy only a local could master. He looked up when he saw her. His gaze lingered. Then he looked away, pretending not to notice. Emma approached. You live here? She asked, her voice a little too sharp. He raised an eyebrow. Unfortunately. I need to ask you something, she said. That sounds promising. I saw a grave, she said, in the old cemetery, with my name on it, and my birthday, and a date a week from now. The can stopped moving. The boy blinked, slowly. You saw the grave too, he said, almost a whisper. Emma stepped back. Wait. What do you mean do? He looked around quickly, then motioned for her to follow him. Come on, not here. They crossed the street and ducked behind an abandoned barber shop. The inside was dark. Dust thick in the air, scissors still resting on chairs like they'd just been used. The boy dropped his bag and sat on the counter. My name's Mason, he said. I've lived in Elmridge my whole life. I've seen a lot of weird stuff, but the graves, those are the worst. Emma stood with her back to the wall, arms crossed tightly. Tell me everything. He looked at her. Then he nodded. There were others, before you. Not many, just 3 that I know of. All tourists. All stayed at the inn. All saw their graves. Emma's throat tightened. The first was a woman from New York. Came here in 2003. She was a writer. Said she needed quiet. Stayed for a week. On the 3rd day, she found a grave with her name. Thought it was creepy, but kept writing it off. He paused. She left town, or tried to. Her car disappeared. They found her tire tracks leading into the woods, but no body, no car, just her suitcase, folded clothes, like she had unpacked herself. Emma shivered. The second was a guy, backpacker from Oregon. Young, maybe 21. I met him once. He joked about how this town felt like the Twilight Zone. Saw his grave too. Freaked him out. He checked out of the inn the next morning. Told Maureen he was going to hike out on foot since the road looped weird. Emma closed her eyes. They found his boots a mile from the cemetery, Mason said. That was it. She opened her eyes again. And the third. He hesitated. She was different. She came about 2 years ago. Her name was Elise. Emma's breath caught. Elise Marlowe, Mason continued. She didn't run. She stayed. Said the grave was some kind of message, a warning. She thought she could beat it. Emma pulled the locket from her pocket and opened it. This Elise. Mason's eyes widened. Where did you get that? I found it buried in a wooden box, near a flat stone. There was a letter inside, warning me about a shadow. Said the grave is a doorway. Mason nodded grimly. That's what she believed too. What happened to her? No one knows. She told Maureen she was going back to the grave to confront it. She never came back. Sheriff said she left quietly. But everyone knows what that means here. Emma sat down on a stool, suddenly exhausted. Why is this happening? She asked. Mason shrugged. Some say the town is cursed. Others think there's something buried under Elmridge, like a fault in time, or a spiritual fracture. I think it's more personal than that. She looked up. I think the town chooses, Mason said. People who are close to something, some kind of edge. You know, people who've seen death, felt it brush past. Emma thought of the accident 2 years ago. Her car spinning out on a highway. Her waking up in the air. Her mother crying. The nurse saying, "We almost lost you." I've been there, she whispered. Mason nodded like he already knew. You don't have to believe it, he said. But the town does, and the longer you stay, the more it wants to keep you. Emma's voice cracked. How do I stop it? Elise thought you could break the reflection. She believed the thing in the mirror, your doublight, only has power if you don't face it. If you run, it replaces you. But if you confront it, what happens? No one knows. Elise didn't make it back to tell us. Emma stood up. Her hands were shaking, but she clenched them tight. Will you come with me? She asked. To the grave? Mason hesitated. I've only been there once, never stepped too close. But yeah, I'll come. You shouldn't be alone when you go back. They left town an hour before sunset. Mason led her down a narrow trail deeper into the woods than Emma had ever dared to go alone. The air felt thicker here, quieter. Even the birds were gone. As they neared the graveyard, Emma felt the pressure return sensation of being watched. The same one she felt on her first night. The grave was there, still freshly carved, still waiting. They stood before it in silence. Then Mason reached into his coat and handed her something, a small handheld mirror. Take it, he said. It's from the antique shop. Don't ask how I got it. Just trust me. If your reflection changes, you'll know. Emma took the mirror, her hand brushing his. It was colder than the air around them. Suddenly, a low rumble came from beneath the earth. Mason grabbed her arm. It's happening. The ground beneath the grave pulsed once like a heartbeat. Then the air split with a sharp crack. A dark figure stepped from behind the gravestone. Tall, pale, wearing her face. It wasn't smiling this time. It just stared. Emma raised the mirror. Her reflection blinked, but the figure didn't. It just stood there, emotionless, soulless. Emma lowered the mirror and stepped forward. Why me? She asked the shadow. It didn't speak. Answer me. The shadow tilted its head. Then slowly Terablit raised a hand and pointed at the gravestone. Emma followed its finger. The date had changed. August 17, 2025. Was now. Today. Paranormal begins. Shadow figures. Dreams of dying. Her phone glitches. She hears her own voice whispering warnings, and sees herself in dreams. Buried alive. Emma woke with a start. Her chest heaving. Sweat cooling on her skin despite the chill in the room. The nightmare had felt so vivid, so real. She could still smell the damp earth and feel the cold pressure of soil pressing down on her chest. She was buried alive. Darkness surrounded her. The faint glow of candlelight flickered above. She reached up, trembling, but her arms were pinned by heavy dirt. She tried to scream, but no sound came. Then, she saw her own face reflected in the flickering light, a pale, desperate version of herself. Eyes wide and pleading. "Help me." The voice was her own, echoing from the depths of the grave. Emma gasped and bolted upright in bed. Her heart pounded violently. The Olden was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood. Her phone vibrated on the bedside table, the screen flickering with static. She grabbed it quickly. The screen was glitching, colors shifting wildly, images blurring. Then, through the static, a voice whispered her name. "Emma, Emma, you don't belong here." The voice was faint, barely audible, but unmistakably hers. She dropped the phone. It slid under the bed, still buzzing. She scrambled to retrieve it. The screen flashed again, this time showing a blurry image of a gravestone. Her gravestone. The date on it flickered between several days, finally settling on today's date. Emma's hands shook. She was no longer sure if the line between nightmare and reality was even there anymore. The days that followed were a blur. Emma found herself slipping deeper into a waking nightmare. At every turn, shadowy figures flickered at the edge of her vision, dark shapes with indistinct features, watching her silently from doorways, across empty streets, behind trees. One evening, she was sitting in the inn's dim lounge when the flickering lights plunged the room into darkness. When the power returned moments later, Emma saw her reflection in the cracked window at her own, but the pale shadow version, staring back with hollow eyes. She blinked, the reflection was gone. She rubbed her eyes, but the feeling stayed, the creeping sensation that her double was near. Her dreams became more intense. Every night, she found herself reliving the same vision, trapped in a coffin, buried under layers of soil. Her breathing was shallow, her panic rising. She heard whispered warnings in the dark. "You must leave before it's too late. The shadow waits." One night, she woke to find her room freezing cold. Her breath formed mist in the air. The mirror fogged over slowly, letters appearing through the vapor. "Dig deeper." Emma shivered. She reached for the mirror with trembling hands. Her reflection smiled. She did not. The phone glitches worsened. Incoming calls with no one on the other end. Messages filled with cryptic warnings. Images of graves, shadows, and the word "run" in jagged letters. Emma tried to block it out, but the messages came relentlessly. One morning, she woke to find a voicemail. She played it hesitantly. Her own voice whispered clearly, "You're running out of time. Don't trust the shadows. Don't look behind you." Emma dropped the phone again. Tears filled her eyes. What was sending these messages? Why was her own voice the messenger? One evening, Mason returned. He found Emma pacing the small room, eyes wild and exhausted. "You look worse," he said, worry creasing his face. Emma nodded. "I'm losing my mind. These nightmares, the whispers, the phone. I don't know what's real anymore." Mason handed her the small mirror he had given her earlier. "Try this," he said. "Look at yourself through this when you start to feel the shadows." Emma stared into the glass. At first, only her reflection. Then, behind it, a dark figure. The shadow version of herself. Emma gasped. "Can you see it?" "Yes, it's getting stronger." Mason frowned. "We have to find a way to stop it." Late that night, Emma heard faint footsteps outside her door. She froze, heart pounding. A soft whisper called her name. "Emma." She got up slowly, pulled open the door. No one there. Only a cold breeze brushing past her, carrying the faint scent of damp earth. She looked down. A small mound of dirt lay just outside her room. Freshly disturbed soil. Her breath caught. Then, the whisper again. "You belong beneath the earth." Emma slammed the door shut and locked it. Her dreams began to merge with reality. She saw herself buried alive in the ground beneath Elmridge. The shadow figure standing over her grave. The cold silence of the earth swallowing her whole. She awoke each time gasping for air, soaked in sweat. Each night, the shadows grew bolder. One night, she saw a figure in her doorway, a pale woman with hollow eyes and a sorrowful smile. Elise, the woman from the locket. The warning. Emma reached out. Elise whispered, "You have to fight. Don't let the shadow win." Then, she vanished. Emma knew her time was running out. The date on the gravestone of her death date was closing in. The whispers, the dreams, the shadow still pointing to one truth. Her fate was sealed unless she acted. But how do you fight a shadow that is part of you? How do you outrun a death that's already been written? Emma gripped the small mirror tightly. The reflection stared back. But this time, Emma met its gaze and whispered back, Not today. Fight or flight. She tries to escape, but the GPS loops endlessly, roads warp. She's always led back to the graveyard. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains, but Emma barely noticed. Her mind was a whirlwind of fear and determination. She had to get out of Elmridge, no matter what it cost. She packed a small bag with essentials: phone charger, bottled water, a map. The mirror Mason had given her and headed to the rental car parked outside the inn. Her fingers trembled as she slid into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. She exhaled, steeling herself. She would leave this cursed town behind, escape the shadows, the whispers, and the grave that bore her name. Emma plugged the car's GPS into the dashboard, entering the nearest city as her destination. She pressed start. The GPS beeped, and the voice said cheerfully, "Head east on Maple Street." Emma followed, the tires crunching softly on the gravel road. But as she drove, the roads began to twist and turn unnaturally. Maps and signs seemed wrong, some disappeared altogether. The trees grew denser, the sunlight dimmer. The GPS recalculating route, it said. Emma frowned. The GPS was directing her in circles. She checked the map in her hands. It didn't help. The roads on the paper matched the paths she'd been driving. They didn't. The lines bent and warped, curving impossibly. She drove faster. The GPS voice repeated, "Head east on Maple Street," over and over. But the sign ahead said, "Welcome to Elmridge." She blinked. How was she still in town? Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, then began to sink again. Emma was trapped in a loop. Every road led back to the old cemetery. Her eyes filled with tears of frustration. She pulled over, shaking her head. No, this can't be happening. She reached for her phone to call Mason. No signal. She stepped out of the car and looked around. The trees towered above, blocking the sky. The air was heavy and thick. The shadows crept closer. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the clearing. Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. She looked up. There, just ahead, was the iron gate of the cemetery. The same gate she had crossed days before. The gravestone with her name stood silently beyond the gate. The date had not changed, still marked August 17, 2025. Emma's breath caught. She stepped forward slowly. Inside the graveyard, the air felt charged. The shadows flickered. Emma's reflection shimmered in the mirror she held. The shadow figure appeared again. This time, it moved toward her. Slow, deliberate. Emma gripped the mirror tighter. Her heart pounded. The figure stopped a few feet away. It pointed again at the gravestone. Emma shook her head. "No, I'm not done." The figure vanished into the mist. Emma dropped to her knees, tears streaming down. She was trapped. The town wouldn't let her leave. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Mason appeared through the fog. His face was pale but determined. "I found you," he said. Emma looked up. "How?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm here now." Emma handed him the mirror. "Do you see it?" He looked. The shadow figure stood behind her reflection. Mason swallowed hard. "We have to fight." "But how?" Emma whispered. Mason shook his head. "I don't know." The sun set quickly. Emma and Mason sat near the grave. The shadows lengthened. The wind whispered secrets in an ancient tongue. Emma felt the weight of the coming night. They had hours before the date on the grave. Before the shadow claimed her, Emma closed her eyes. She thought of the dreams, the whispers, the warning from Elise. She opened the locket again. Inside was a small piece of parchment, faded writing. "Face the shadow, break the reflection, or be lost forever." Emma looked at Mason. "We have to face it." He nodded. Together, the night fell. The graveyard was silent except for the rustling leaves. Emma and Mason stood before the gravestone. The mirror held tightly in Emma's hand. The air grew cold. A deep hum filled the ground. Then, the shadow figure appeared, looming, faceless yet eerily familiar. Emma stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear. "I'm not afraid." The figure shifted. The grave's date glowed. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the mirror's surface. Emma raised it. The reflection shattered. The shadow screamed a sound like breaking glass. It faded into nothingness. The sun rose. Emma and Mason stood alone in the clearing. The gravestone was cracked, the date erased. The shadows were gone. Emma's breath returned to normal. She felt free. The GPS signal returned on her phone. The roads straightened. Emma smiled faintly. She was alive. Backstory, revelation. Who is she really? A psychic tells her she may have died in a past life in that town. The grave is calling her to finish the cycle. The morning after the shadow vanished and the grave cracked, Emma felt lighter, like a weight had lifted from her chest. The dawn sunlight streamed through her window, warm and promising. She wanted to leave Elmridge behind and never look back. But deep inside, a nagging question lingered. Who was she, really? Determined to understand, Emma sought out the town's only reputed psychic, Madame Serafini. The shop was tucked between a dusty bookstore and a closed cafe, its faded sign swinging in the breeze. The windows were fogged, curtains drawn. Emma hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside, the air was thick with incense and whispers of unknown origin. Madame Serafini sat behind a small table covered with crystals, tarot cards, and a cracked crystal ball. She looked up, her eyes sharp and penetrating despite her age. "You've come," she said softly. Emma nodded, pulling out the locket and the broken mirror. "I need to know what's happening to me." Madame Serafini smiled faintly. "Sit," she invited. Emma sat opposite her, clutching the locket. The psychic reached out, placing her hands over Emma's. Her touch was warm, almost electric. "Tell me your story," she said. Emma recounted everything: the trip to Elmridge, the grave, the shadows, the dreams, the mirror. Madame Serafini listened quietly. When Emma finished, the psychic closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She began to chant softly in a language Emma did not recognize. Suddenly, Madame Serafini's eyes snapped open. "You are not just Emma Grace Lark," she said. Emma's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" The psychic gestured to the crystal ball. Images flickered within it, ghostly scenes from another time. A young woman in a white dress walking through the same woods. A sudden fall. A grave freshly dug. A funeral. The young woman's face was unmistakable. It was Emma's. "You lived here once," Madame Serafini explained. "In a past life." Emma shook her head, disbelief flooding her. "Impossible." "Not impossible," the psychic said gently. "You died here long ago, not by accident, but by a curse tied to this land." Emma's mind reeled. She thought of the old town, the shadows, the cycle. "The grave calling you is the earth demanding closure." "Closure," Emma whispered. Madame Serafini nodded. "Cycles of life and death often repeat when wounds remain open. You are connected to that past life, bound to finish what was left undone." Emma swallowed hard. "Why me?" "Because you carry her soul," the psychic replied. "Her memories bleed through time into your dreams and reality." Emma's hands trembled. "Is there a way to end it?" Madame Serafini looked grave. "You must find the truth behind her death. Finish the cycle, or the shadow will return." Emma left the psychic's shop feeling both lost and strangely grounded. She wasn't just a victim. She was part of something greater, a story older than she could imagine. Over the next days, Emma dug through the town archives, searching for anything related to her past life. She found an old newspaper article dated 1897. The headline read, "Young woman dies mysteriously in Elmridge Woods." The photo beside the article was grainy, but the face was unmistakable, same face from Madame Serafini's vision. Her name was Evelyn Grace Lark. Emma's heart pounded. Evelyn was her. The article described Evelyn's life-kind, gentle, beloved by the town. But on one autumn evening, she vanished. A search party found her body days later, buried beneath the trees. The cause of death was unclear. Some whispered it was murder. Others believed a curse haunted the land. Emma felt the weight of Evelyn's story. The unresolved tragedy echoed through time, trapping souls in a loop of pain and loss. She knew what she had to do. That night, Emma dreamed of Evelyn. The woman stood before her in a moonlit forest. Her eyes were filled with sorrow. "Find the truth," Evelyn whispered. "Free me." Emma woke, tears streaming. She vowed to finish the cycle. Armed with new purpose, Emma prepared to face whatever awaited. The past and present intertwined. The grave no longer a symbol of doom but a beacon for redemption. Confrontation. She digs up the grave. Inside, a coffin, a mirror, and a photo of her today, standing in the cemetery. Emma stood at the edge of the graveyard under a waning moon, its pale light casting eerie shadows over the cracked earth. The night was silent except for the soft rustling of leaves in the cool breeze. Her breath formed small clouds as she exhaled, fingers trembling around the small shovel Mason had brought. This was it, the moment she had dreaded and prepared for. She had to dig up the grave bearing her name. The grave that was more than just a resting place. It was a puzzle piece, a warning, a doorway. Mason stood beside her, hands in his pockets, watching quietly. Neither spoke as Emma knelt and pressed the shovel into the dirt. The soil was surprisingly soft, as if waiting to be disturbed. She dug carefully, scraping layers of earth, the blade hitting wood beneath the surface. Her heart pounded louder with each scoop. At last, the coffin's edge appeared. Dark wood, weathered by time. Emma reached out and brushed the dirt away. The coffin lid was heavy. She pressed her weight down and pushed it open. Inside was a mirror, its surface cracked, but intact, and a photograph. Emma's breath caught. She lifted the photo carefully. It was a picture of herself taken moments ago, standing right there in the graveyard, staring at the very grave she now opened. The mirror reflected the moonlight, fractured but gleaming. Emma's reflection shimmered. The shadow figure flickered behind her image. She swallowed hard. The air thickened. Suddenly, the ground beneath her trembled. A cold wind rushed through the cemetery, carrying whispers in a language she couldn't understand. Mason grabbed her arm. "Emma, what is it?" She pointed to the coffin. The mirror inside was no ordinary glass. It seemed to pulse with life. Suddenly, the reflection shifted. Her shadow self stepped out. Tall, pale, faceless. It reached for Emma. She stumbled back, heart racing. But then she remembered the locket and the psychic's words. Face the shadow. Break the reflection. Finish the cycle. Emma gripped the mirror in the coffin and lifted it toward the shadow. A beam of moonlight struck the glass. The shadow recoiled. Emma held the mirror steady. Her own reflection appeared, strong and clear. She whispered, "You don't own me." The shadow screamed a sound like shattering glass and dissolved into mist. The coffin glowed softly. Emma reached inside. There was a folded letter. She unfolded it, hands shaking. The handwriting was elegant but hurried. It read, "To whoever finds this, you carry my soul. I was trapped by fear and sorrow. Only by confronting the shadow can you be free. Do not run. Do not hide. Face the darkness. Finish the cycle. Evelyn." Emma folded the letter. Her tears fell silently. She felt a strange peace wash over her. The curse was broken. The cycle was complete. The grave was no longer a prison. Mason helped her close the coffin. They covered it with earth again, this time with reverence. The night air grew warm. The shadows lifted. Emma looked up at the sky. Stars twinkled brightly. She smiled. She was free. Sacrifice or escape. Time's running out. She's told. She must either accept her death or confront what's buried with her. The grave was covered once more. The soil packed, the coffin sealed. But Emma knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Though the shadow had vanished from the mirror, and the photograph had burned itself to ash, under the moonlight, something remained. A residue, a presence, a weight in the air. She could feel it trailing her, even as she and Mason walked back toward the inn in silence, even as the town seemed somehow brighter, even as the darkness that once clung to Elmridge's streets had lifted. Just slightly something followed. The grave might have been filled, but it wasn't finished. That night, Emma sat alone on the edge of her bed, turning Evelyn's letter over and over in her hands. Face the darkness, finish the cycle. She thought she had, but something about the words still lingered, as if they hadn't fully taken root, as if they weren't written only for her. She held up the mirror one last time. Her reflection stared back normal, human, no shadow figure behind her. But just as she went to set it down, the reflection blinked, and she hadn't. She jerked upright, knocking the mirror onto the bed. The air thickened instantly. The mirror vibrated softly, rhythmically like a ticking clock. Then her phone screen lit up. An anonymous notification. "You have 1 day left." She opened it. Just a blank screen. Then a line of text appeared, letter by letter. "You haven't chosen yet." Another message blinked into place beneath it. "The grave does not forgive confusion. Choose acceptance or confrontation." Emma's heart pounded. She whispered aloud, "What else is there to confront? I already." But then she remembered what Madame Serafini had said. The grave is not just a place. It's a memory, a lesson, a test. And she remembered the psychic's warning. You must find the truth behind her death. She had found the grave. She had seen the past, but she had never uncovered how Evelyn really died. Not fully, not completely. The next morning, Emma went back to the psychic. Madame Serafini met her with weary eyes, as though she had been expecting this moment. "You still carry her weight," the psychic said before Emma even sat down. Emma nodded. "I saw her grave. I saw her face. I felt her fear. But I didn't see how she died." Serafini motioned her closer. She wasn't murdered by a man. She wasn't taken by sickness. Evelyn Grace Lark was buried alive. Emma froze. What? She was accused of witchcraft by townspeople after being seen in the woods at night. Serafini explained softly. They thought she consorted with spirits. They thought her soul had been taken. So they buried her. Alavito trapped the evil inside. Emma's hands trembled. She screamed in her grave until the dirt filled her lungs. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. No wonder Evelyn's soul had never rested. She wasn't just calling out for justice, Serafini whispered. She was calling for someone to hear her scream. Emma stood slowly. Then that's what I have to do. I have to go back. Mason tried to stop her. He stood on the porch of the inn, arms crossed, shaking his head. This is insane. I know, Emma replied. She's gone, Emma. You faced the shadow. You broke the mirror. What if going back starts it all over again? Emma met his eyes. She wasn't trying to kill me, Mason. She was trying to speak through me. She was buried alive, and no one ever heard her. And now she's asking me to listen. Mason looked away, fists clenched. Emma walked past him, into the mist once more. The grave was waiting. The earth soft again, looser than it should have been. Emma dropped to her knees and dug bare-handed this time, as if her urgency outweighed logic. Mason eventually appeared beside her, silent, and picked up the shovel. They dug together. Again, the coffin emerged. Emma pulled it open. Inside now, the mirror was gone. So was the photo. Instead of Lynn's body, perfectly preserved, lying in her white dress, hands crossed at her chest, eyes closed but peaceful. Emma reached in and touched Evelyn's hand. Warm. Suddenly, her vision blurred. The world twisted. She stood in darkness. Not metaphorical. Real. Tangible. A suffocating blackness surrounded her. The sound of soil falling. The weight of dirt pressing on skin. Screams rising. Cracking, unanswered. Emma was Evelyn. She was in the coffin. She was dying. A flicker of light appeared in the darkness. Emma Evelyn crawled toward it. Her lungs burned. But she reached the sliver of light and emerged. Not in the real world. In a memory. A hazy vision of the townspeople, circling, chanting, shovels in hand. The sheriff from now only younger leading the charge. Maureen, the innkeeper, was there too. Younger, stone-faced. All of them burying her. Emma screamed at them. I'm not a witch. I was trying to protect you. But they didn't hear. They didn't listen. They covered the grave. Turned away. Then, a voice whispered behind her. You have a choice. She turned. Evelyn stood there. Or was it Emma? They mirrored each other perfectly. You can stay here, Evelyn said. Let the past take you. Let it finish. Emma swallowed. Or you can take your place as the one who remembers. The one who speaks the truth. Evelyn held out her hand. You must carry what they buried. Emma reached for her. The moment their fingers touched, Emma felt a surge of cold, fire, light. She fell backward into herself, and woke in the coffin, gasping. Alive. Evelyn's body was gone. Only the white dress remained. Mason helped her out of the grave. What happened? He asked, wide-eyed. Emma clutched the dress to her chest. I saw her death. I lived it. I chose to carry it. Carry it where? Emma looked up at the rising sun. To the world. Later that day, she found a typewriter in the old town library. She began to write Evelyn's story, word by word, sentence by sentence. The town of Elmridge would forget her. The grave would fade. But the truth would not. Emma chose not death, not escape. She chose memory. She chose voice. Twist ending. She disappears. 1 week later, on the exact death date, she vanishes. Her name now appears in the obituaries. The town of Elmridge was silent in the days that followed. The grave had been filled. The shadows gone. The air no longer whispered. The mirror lay shattered on the hotel nightstand, its pieces untouched. Mason checked in on Emma every day. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much left to say. She barely left her room. She wrote endlessly, page after page, documenting Evelyn's story, no longer a ghost tale, but a confession, a reckoning. Each morning, she awoke at exactly 3:17 a.m., the same time she'd seen on the gravestone's inscription before it. Vanished, the same time her dreams used to begin. But now, there were no dreams, just silence. Emma didn't fight it. She just waited. Exactly 1 week passed. August 17th. The death date etched into the headstone. The one that used to be hers. The morning began like any other. Cool. Still. Unremarkable. Mason knocked on her door at 8 a.m. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He called her name. Emma. Silence. He pushed the door open. The bed was neatly made. The room was clean. Her notebook lay on the desk, its final page torn out. Her bags, her mirror, her locket all untouched. But she was gone. Vanished. At first, Mason thought she'd simply left town early. But her car was still parked outside. He waited. Hours passed. Then a day. He contacted the sheriff. They searched the town. Then the woods. Then the cemetery. They dug. They found nothing. No grave. No coffin. No Emma. The next morning, Mason stopped at the diner to grab coffee. On the counter sat a folded newspaper. The Elmridge Gazette. He nearly dropped his cup when he saw the front page. Obituary: Emma Grace Lark. August 17, 1996, August 17, 2025. Beloved daughter, traveler, storyteller. May she find the peace she gave others. A small photo showed Emma smiling at the base of the Elmridge Cemetery hill. The article went on to describe her as a kind soul who passed quietly during a visit to our beloved town. No mention of disappearance, no cause of death, just finality, just acceptance, like it had always been this way. Mason ran to the sheriff's office, held up the paper. This is wrong. She's not dead. She's missing. Sheriff Maddox looked confused. Son, she passed away a week ago. I signed the certificate myself. You what? Maddox frowned. She came into town. She wrote something important. Then she died in her sleep. That's not what happened. Mason's voice broke. No one found a body. No autopsy, no. She died peacefully, the sheriff repeated, as if it was her time. Mason stormed back to the inn, back to her room. Still untouched, still hollow, still wrong. On the desk, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. A folded piece of paper, the final page from her notebook. His hands shook as he opened it. Written in Emma's handwriting. Time doesn't move forward here, it repeats. But I understand now. I was never meant to escape the grave. I was meant to become the voice inside it. Evelyn didn't want freedom. She wanted understanding. And maybe so did I. If you're reading this, then you remember me. That's enough. EGL. Mason sat in the chair and stared at the note for hours. And then, like dust in the wind, it disintegrated. Gone. A week later, the town moved on. The grave never reappeared. The obituaries never changed. Emma Grace Lark, born and gone. Visitors still came to Elmridge from time to time. They'd visit the old cemetery, now freshly mowed, tidy, ordinary. No strange graves, no whispers, no mirrors, no Emma. But sometimes, in the hush between wind gusts, a voice could still be heard. Soft, curious, familiar. Why is my name on a gravestone? Twist ending. She disappears. 1 week later, on the exact death date, she vanishes. Her name now appears in the obituaries. August 17th arrived like any other day. The skies over Elmridge were cloudy but calm, the kind of gray that settles deep into your bones. Mason hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of his bed in the small inn, the one that still smelled faintly of lavender and dust, staring at his phone as the clock ticked toward 3:17 a.m. That was the time etched on the gravestone Emma had found, the time Evelyn had died, the time the dreams had always begun. And now, it was the time he feared he would lose her. He had knocked on her door several times that night. She hadn't answered. He'd left her alone only because she'd asked him to. Whatever happens. She had said the night before, don't follow me. Not if it's past the 17th. But something didn't sit right. There were no shadows anymore. No signs. No more whispered warnings in mirrors. Only silence. Too much silence. At exactly 3:17, the light beneath Emma's door flickered once, then went out. Mason rushed to her room. He knocked hard. Emma. No reply. He called again, louder. Still nothing. Heart racing, he turned the knob. The door creaked open. The room was empty. Her suitcase was still packed, sitting untouched in the corner. The bedsheets were neat, untouched. Her shoes were by the window, her journal missing. On the desk, there was only one thing left behind. A folded obituary clipping. Mason picked it up. It was printed on old paper, yellowed at the edges, and across the top, it read in bold black letters, Emma Grace Lark, 19,960,2025. Elmridge, Maine, August 17th. Emma Grace Lark, a traveler, writer, and kind-hearted soul, passed away quietly in her sleep while visiting our town. She will be remembered for her compassionate heart, her curious mind, and the light she brought with her. Services were held privately. No photo, no signature, no source. Just a story that no one remembered writing. Mason stumbled backward, heart pounding. This had to be some mistake, a trick, a leftover piece from the grave's curse. He checked the front desk. No one had seen her leave. No guests heard anything. The innkeeper, Maureen, shook her head. She checked out yesterday. That's not possible, Mason said. She left a thank you note, Maureen replied, retrieving a slip of paper from a drawer. In Emma's handwriting, thank you for everything. I found what I needed. Mason stared at the note. It wasn't goodbye. It was closure. Still, he searched the town, the diner, the woods, the cemetery. He stood in the same spot where her name had once been etched into the gravestone. Now, the headstone was blank, just a slab of granite without inscription, without history. He ran his fingers across its surface. Cold, smooth, empty. At the sheriff's office, Mason demanded answers, but the sheriff looked confused. Emma who? Emma Lark. She stayed at the inn. She spoke to you about Evelyn Lark. You signed the death certificate. The sheriff blinked. I've never signed anything like that, and I don't know anyone by that name. He typed on his computer, searched local records. There was nothing. No sign Emma had ever been in Elmridge. No hotel registry. No obituary in the system. No article. No death certificate. No Evelyn either. It was like both women had been erased. Mason returned to the inn that evening. He scoured Emma's room for anything she may have left behind. That's when he saw it. The mirror. Not the cracked one. This was different. Small. Framed in brass. Perfectly clean. It sat on the nightstand, facing the door. Mason approached it slowly, and when he looked in, he didn't see his reflection. He saw Emma, standing in the woods, smiling. Behind her, the cemetery. The same crooked tree. The same fog. She raised a finger and pressed it gently to her lips. Then she mouthed the words, "I'm okay," and vanished. Mason stumbled back. The mirror went dark. He stared at it for what felt like hours. No reflection. No image. Just glass. He took it with him when he left Elmridge. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. People in nearby towns began reporting seeing a woman in white, gentle, walking the edge of the woods, leaving small folded notes on doorsteps. Each one contained a variation of the same message. Tell them the stories matter, even if no one believes them. A week later, the Boston Herald published a brief obituary in its weekend paper. Obituary correction notice. We regret the earlier omission of Emma Grace Lark, who passed away in Elmridge, Maine. Details of her passing remain private at the family's request. But Emma had no family, no next of kin, no forwarding address. Mason returned home eventually. He opened Emma's journal and began to type. He published her story under the title, "I Found My Own Grave." It spread online like wildfire. People were captivated. Skeptics called it fiction. Believers whispered it was real. But only Mason knew the truth. He had seen the mirror. He had read the note. He had felt her presence. One night, months later, he dreamed of Emma. She stood by the same gravestone, wearing the same dress she had worn in Elmridge. But now, she was different. At peace. Whole. She smiled and said only one thing. It had to happen, or I never would have been heard. He reached for her, but woke up before he could touch her hand. And then he looked at his nightstand. The mirror had cracked. A thin fracture running straight down the middle. A single word written across its fogged surface. Remember. Open-ended question. If you found your own grave, would you dig it up? The final shot. A new tourist walks by, stops at the same grave, and gasps it's his name now. Late autumn returned to Elmridge with quiet. Brittle winds and leaves like rustling whispers across the road. The cemetery sat at the town's northern edge, framed by crooked fences and ancient trees with bare limbs pointing upward like frozen prayers. The headstone was still there, the one without a name. To the locals, it was just a stone. No one tended it. Yet it never crumbled. No moss grew upon it. The earth around it never sank nor rose. Some whispered it had always been there, long before the cemetery was even drawn on maps. And still, tourists came, one by one. Curious travelers, urban escapees, writers, seekers. Some claimed the stone gave them chills, others walked by without ever noticing it. But on this overcast Thursday, a young man in his 20s wandered into Elmridge with a backpack and a rental car full of camera gear. His name was Alex. He was a YouTuber, one of those haunted place explorers with a few thousand followers and a taste for internet legend. He'd heard of Elmridge from an obscure Reddit thread, the town that buried its visitors. A few deep dives later, he found mention of Emma Grace Lark and the supposedly cursed grave that bore her name. But no photo, no proof, no ending, just mystery, which was perfect. He needed content. He arrived around noon, filming B-roll as he walked past the library, the general store, the now abandoned inn. Everything was oddly quiet, even for a Thursday. He commented into his camera, "So far, it's like every other small haunted town. But rumor has it, somewhere in that cemetery," he turned the lens toward the north, "is a grave that knows your name. Before you do." He laughed, half skeptical, half hoping for something real. At the cemetery gate, a cold wind blew. His camera flickered once. Battery full, signal strong. Still, the screen glitched. He chalked it up to cheap tech and pushed forward. Graves lined the path in neat rows. Some old, names eroded. some newer, with plastic flowers and prayer stones. He wandered deeper, then stopped. There it was, the stone, unmarked, alone, as if space had been cleared around it. He raised the camera. This has to be it. As he stepped closer, he noticed something strange. The light changed. The sky, though clouded, seemed to darken around him. The wind stilled. No birds, no movement, only the low hum of silence. He lowered the camera, and then his heart nearly stopped. His eyes widened. There, engraved faintly across the surface of the stone, in weathered lettering that hadn't been there moments before, Alex Reed, born October 3rd, 2000, died. The death date wasn't filled in. Not yet. He stumbled backward. No, what is this? He checked his ID. Birth date, October 3rd, 2000. Middle name, James. Just like on the stone. His hands trembled. A voice whispered, low and feminine, behind him. Would you dig it up? He spun around. No one. Just wind. Just graves. But now the air felt thick, heavy with something unspoken. He backed away, breathing fast. This is a prank, he whispered. Someone must have hacked it. 3D projection? But even he didn't believe it. There were no lights. No signs of technology. Just the stone. Just his name. Just time waiting to be completed. He turned and ran. The cemetery path twisted behind him in ways he didn't remember walking. Left, then right, then left again. He passed the same grave twice. The one with the angel missing its head. The camera in his hand buzzed sizzling, then black. Battery dead. He hadn't recorded any of it. He made it back to the car, locked the doors, and sat in the driver's seat for a long time. His breath fogged the glass. He looked down at his hands, still shaking. He wasn't sure if he was imagining things, but on his forearm, beneath the cuff of his hoodie, he could swear he saw it. A faint smudge of dirt, like grave soil, clinging to him. Back in his hotel room that night, Alex sat in front of his laptop, uploading footage. The cemetery shots were fine, up until the final scene, where the unmarked gravestone should have appeared. Nothing. Just blank static. A 3-minute chunk of corrupted data. His hands hovered over the keyboard. He could feel the pulse in his temples. Something had followed him. He opened his browser, Googled the name again. Emma Grace Lark. No results. No social media. No mention of a death, a grave, or even the town of Elmridge. Like it had all been scrubbed. But then, a single result appeared. A PDF scan of an old book. Title, Stories That Find You. The chapter header read, The Grave with No End. It described a phenomenon where certain people wanderers, seekers, those who search too long in the wrong place find themselves face to face with their own end. Before it arrives, not everyone, just a few. It ended with one line, and those who find their grave must decide, uncover it, or walk away knowing it waits for them either way. Alex shut the laptop. He stared at the wall for a long time. He couldn't explain what he saw, and part of him didn't want to. Weeks passed. He never uploaded the footage, not even a teaser. His followers asked why he disappeared for so long, why his videos became lighter. Travel, food, beaches, no more ghosts, no more graveyards. He never returned to Elmridge, never spoke of the stone, never explained why he started wearing a bracelet over his wrist where the dirt stain never quite washed off. But sometimes when he was alone, and the clock struck 3:17 a.m., his phone screen would light up. No notification, just a whisper through the speaker. Would you dig it up? Years later, a different traveler came to Elmridge. They found the stone, felt the chill, and saw a name. Not Emma, not Alex, their own. And so the question echoed, always the same, forever unanswered. If you found your own grave, would you dig it up?